mind that Laurie was the one he loved. With single-minded determination, he'd been asking her to marry him for years now, and she'd been saying no, while practically everyone in the universe told her she'd lost her mind. Unlike the music business, Harlan Patrick Adams and his love were a sure thing, her mother had told her repeatedly. His family was the richest and most powerful in Los Pinos, practically in all of Texas. He could give her stability, the kind of rock-solid future most women dreamed of, the kind her mother had always craved. Unfortunately, Laurie's dreams tended toward a world that no one, not even an Adams, could guarantee. From the time she'd learned the words to an old Patsy Cline hit, she'd wanted to be a country music sensation. God had blessed her with the voice for it. Whether it was the church choir or the school chorus, Laurie had always been the star soloist. The applause had been wonderful, but she would have sung for the sheer joy of it. And maybe, at one time, she would have been content with that. But over the years, Harlan Patrick had unwittingly fed her obsession by seeing to it that she saw concerts by every country superstar who appeared anywhere in Texas. He'd even wrangled a backstage meeting with a few. Laurie had discovered her destiny. Somehow, though, he'd never taken seriously her desire to be up there on the stage, earning her own applause. For him, the gestures had been an indulgence. For her, they had been an inspiration. He'd thought time, a little coaxing, and a few breath-stealing kisses would change her mind. She'd found his inability to recognize and accept her dream more annoying than her mom's. After all, Laurie Jensen had had a tough life. She was practical to the very core. Harlan Patrick, however, was supposed to be Laurie's soulmate, the man in whom she'd confided her hopes and dreams all her life. The discovery that he'd merely been indulging what he called her little fantasies had brought on one of the most heated fights they'd ever had. Why hadn't he been able to understand that singing was simply something she had to do, with the gift God had given her? He'd let her, she thought indignantly, sing in the neighboring towns if that's what she wanted, but Nashville had been out of the question. His ultimatum had been phrased in a generous, condescending tone that had set her teeth on edge. As if the decision were his to make, she'd thought, as she turned on her heel and walked out of his life for good. In one way she was grateful. It had made it easier to say goodbye, to head for Nashville without looking back. She'd dug in her heels, too, even when the going had been tough and she'd been waiting tables to make ends meet. Knowing that he'd welcome her back with an "I told you so" smile had driven her to stay the course. It had been 2 long, lonely years before she'd been discovered by her agent, but then things had happened so quickly it had left her reeling. She'd captured the Horizon Award for Up-and-Coming Stars with her first album, a Grammy and a CMA Award with her second. She'd gone from a show starter for the superstars to a concert tour of her own that had broken box office records. In no time, it seemed, every single debuted at the top of the charts, and every album went gold. Only then, with rave reviews and money in her pocket, had she gone back to Los Pinos. It was the only time she'd seen Harlan Patrick in the 5 years since she'd left. She was home just long enough to discover that the chemistry between them was as explosive as ever, and that he was every bit as bullheaded as he'd been the day she walked out. He'd actually thought that she'd be ready to walk away from it all, now that she'd proved to herself she could do it, as if it had been some cute little game she'd been playing. The man could infuriate her faster than anyone else on earth. Then just a few weeks after their reunion, she'd discovered she was pregnant. From that moment on, all she'd been able to think about was keeping the baby a secret from Harlan Patrick. She'd been able to walk away from him not just once, but twice. Could she do it again, especially with a baby in the picture? She wasn't sure she'd have the strength or even the will.